All right, we're going to get started in a minute or so, so if you guys could please sit down so we can get started. No, not yet. After you give your talk, then we'll invite you all back up. So we will start with our first speakers, and again, hold questions for the panel discussion, which will be at the end after the 4 talks. So our first speaker is Dr. Katie Pelch. She earned a PhD from the University of Missouri, where she actually did work on BPA. Early life exposure to BPA. I actually got to know her when she was a postdoctoral fellow at the NTP, also looking at BPA, but comparing it to alternatives that are being used with regards to PPA. And she's graduated from a postdoctoral fellowship, I suppose, to be now a senior scientist at the Endocrine Disruption Exchange, called TEDx, which actually looks at the interface between chemicals in an everyday environment and human health. So it was perfect to invite you to this symposium. Thank you very much, Katie.
Well, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here, because it has been a really enlightening symposium. So yes, I'm at TEDx, the Endocrine Disruption Exchange, and we are often confused with, but we are not, associated with the community organized TED Talks. They go by the same initials, but they have a little X, we have a big one. And we had it first, I've been told. So at the Endocrine Disruption Exchange, we believe that preventing exposure to harmful chemicals is a pathway to good health. And we do this by advocating for and practicing the transparent translation of basic research on endocrine disrupting chemicals. So today, I'll tell you about the important role for nonprofits in the scientific world, although folks here probably don't need that introduction. But I'll do so by highlighting how TEDx interacts collaboratively to connect academic scientists, nonprofit organizations, regulatory agencies, decision and policymakers, and the public to reduce our exposure to harmful chemicals. So first, we've been talking about toxics in general, but to be more specific about endocrine disrupting chemicals, since that's where we focus our attention. So endocrine disrupting chemicals, for example, plasticizers or phthalates or flame retardants, are chemicals that we come in contact with in our daily lives that can interfere with any aspect of hormone action. So this might mean that they block or mimic or just otherwise disrupt our normal hormonal signals. Hormones act at incredibly small quantities as chemical messengers, sending a signal from one cell or tissue to another. And working together, they orchestrate many vital functions, including the ones I've seen here. And so disruptions, even very small ones, to this finely tuned system have the potential to result in substantial and sometimes permanent impacts on health. I don't think that this crowd probably needs much overview of this, but of course, we're exposed via contaminated food and beverage. For instance, when we cook with nonstick cookware, the perfluorinated compounds are released into our food. Inhalation of household and outdoor dust, as we've heard, from chemicals like flame retardants and phthalates that are released from our furniture and through our skin when we use personal care products and cosmetics. So as we heard earlier, we are actually living in a chemical soup, and we're constantly exposed to very small doses of chemicals. And while these chemicals may have been tested for safety with traditional toxicology methods, many, or some of them, have not necessarily been evaluated for their ability to disrupt the endocrine system. So this leads to why we at TEDx have focused on the endocrine disruptors and why we think they deserve special attention. And that's because, as we've heard, historically there haven't been guideline methods in place to either test for or to regulate these chemicals. So I want to quickly just highlight 4 challenges that we face when dealing with endocrine disrupting chemicals. And the first is effects. And so the effects that are observed at low doses are often very different from the effects that are observed at high doses. And because the endocrine system controls such a wide variety of biological processes, it's important that we study the effects that are the most sensitive. So this might be neurodevelopment or breast development. Second, for many of the endocrine disrupting chemicals, the dose that we're actually exposed to, those just small doses in our day-to-day lives, fall right here, where we know that the endocrine system is acting. And so we need to be looking at the overlap of exposure and effects. And then, as we've heard, is this issue of chronic exposure to mixtures of low doses of chemicals. And we heard from Patrick, it's not just our exposure, but perhaps what generations before us were exposed to. So even if we think about ourselves from our conception all the way to our death, and we don't yet fully understand how our chemical exposures could interact to impact our health. And then the last issue is timing, and really this is two separate issues. So first is the age of exposure. Fetuses and infants are the most at risk to the harmful effects of endocrine disrupting chemicals because this is the time when the body's systems are being developed. The other issue is the sometimes long latency from the onset of exposure to when effects are manifested. And so this can make determining causality very difficult, especially in epidemiological studies. So I started by saying that I wanted to tell you about the important role for nonprofits in the scientific world. And at TEDx, we fulfill this role by being the organization that connects those who are doing the science on endocrine disrupting chemicals with those who can put the science into action. So we partner with scientists and educators to support scientific discovery and help communicate research findings. We also partner with nonprofits that can help us deliver scientific information to government agencies, local, national, and international policy makers, health-conscious businesses, and the public. So today I'm just going to walk through a few of our projects and tools, but I invite you all to check out our brand new website. We actually just released it yesterday, so it's brand new. And here you'll be able to learn more about the other tools that I won't be able to talk about today and to sign up for future updates. So one of the first things is every month with one of our collaborators, Che, the Collaborative on Health and the Environment, we host a 30-minute teleconference call. And so these are really nice. You are welcome to join in and ask questions and participate live, or you can download it and view it later at your own convenience. And these are a great way for scientists to get their research out there and to make sure that you're reaching a wide and diverse audience. Another project that I've been a part of since I joined TEDx, which was just in September, is the list of potential endocrine disrupting chemicals. So this is a growing list of nearly 1,400 chemicals for which there is one or more peer-reviewed study that demonstrates endocrine disrupting properties. So over here on the right, I've listed how the TEDx list has empowered different groups to reduce exposure to endocrine disruptors. So different organizations use this list in different ways. But one really good example that we're aware of is the Healthy Building Network. They use the TEDx list to identify endocrine disrupting chemicals in their publicly available green building materials database. So our hope is that this will ultimately lead to fewer endocrine disrupting chemicals in our built environments. And then one final example for you is that TEDx was one of the first organizations to recognize the potential health impacts of exposure to the chemicals that are associated with hydraulic fracturing. So as it turns out, you might expect, there are a number of endocrine disrupting chemicals that are used during the fracking process. And at TEDx, our oil and gas program has helped local groups and grassroots organizations in Colorado get policies in place that protect them from harmful chemicals associated with fracking. And as part of the rollout of our new website, we have developed a new database that contains all of the peer-reviewed studies that explore the link between health and fracking. So, as I said, it's really hard to tell you everything, but you'll also find on our website links to other organizations, some of which we've heard about today, and to our publications. There's also a tool for learning about the importance of the prenatal window of exposure. It's called the Critical Windows of Development, and it has an associated learning module for use in the classroom, college-level classroom. And with that, I'll wrap up by saying that it can be really overwhelming. So I guess I wanted to share my personal tips on how I think I go about trying to reduce my own exposure, because with over 1,000 potential endocrine disruptors, many with long and complex names, and no real way of knowing what we're exposed to, it's hard to know where to start. So for me, the first thing that I do to make a difference is to start small and look for little changes that I can make in my own personal behavior that can affect change. So as Patrick mentioned, BPA is what brought me into the field, and so the first thing to go in my house is anything that I can, get rid of plastic. This would also mean that we avoid buying canned food, because as we heard, the BPA is used, or BPA or its cousins, are used in the protective resin inside metal cans. So next up, as we heard, the cleaning products, looking for effective natural cleaning products and using some of the guides that we heard about earlier, as well as personal care products, again, trying to minimize the number in use, and then changing things out just one at a time. So run out of toothpaste, oh, what's a better choice? Now's the time to make the decision before I get in the car to go to the store. And then finally, trying to educate myself ahead of time using these tools that we've heard about, and that we also have links to on our website whenever we need to make bigger purchases like furniture, or like I've used Green Science Policies Institute website when I was at the mattress store looking for my son's new mattress. So it's really trying to educate myself so that I can help educate the community members that I come in contact with. And so with that, I'd like to close. Oh, and also by supporting nonprofits and health-focused businesses that are advocating for increased chemical disclosure and decreased use of these chemicals. And so I'd like to close by introducing you to the rest of the TEDx team. We're small but mighty. And thanking the organizations that fund our work and for your attention.